what I'm going to do is I'll start with a little moment of gratitude, and then I will do a recap, a sort of like 1 minute overview of what is energy healing. And then we'll dive into tonight's topic, which is subtle realms, dimensions, and simultaneous parallel universes, and primarily how to leverage the understanding and experience of those aspects of creation in order to promote optimal healing. All right, so here comes a prayer. Thank you to the source of creation. Thank you to the silent being, which is within all things, for being this live webinar. Thank you for being everything. Thank you for being, in particular, those aspects of creation that support the healing process, that are responsible for healing. Thank you to the ancestors, everyone's ancestors, for their loving support, for their participation. Thank you to the divine in all of us for blessing this live webinar with the ability to work concisely and efficiently to embody the logos, which is the translation of expansion of consciousness through speech, to support everyone's maximum understanding and experience of the finer realms of creation, for the blessings that that brings and the ability to master this energy healing process for everyone. And always, finally, with deepest gratitude to the eternal tradition of wisdom, without whose role in the process of being the channel by which knowledge flows, none of this would happen. So thank you to the holy tradition. All right, that was our prayer. Now, recap. What is energy healing? In a minute. Energy healing is the process of focusing attention intelligently in order to promote specific effects at both subtle and gross, or at abstract and dense physical level of creation. Awareness or attention is the flow of that immutable being. It is the flow of that silent source of creation. So when it goes on anything, it activates its own nature, which is wholeness, totality, completeness, ideal functioning. So that's the main principle. We focus our attention. But the tricky bit is, how do we focus our attention and where do we focus our attention? Because if there's a symptom, then the question is, well, do we focus our attention on the symptom? Almost always, the symptom is a physical manifestation that's sort of bubbled up to the surface as a byproduct of something that's underneath. So it makes sense to go to the seed or the cause of that physical symptom. So that's really what we're doing in energy healing, is we're learning how to focus our attention in a really intelligent manner. And of course, all of you have the ability to focus your attention, because we've been doing it even since before we could talk, or before we knew anything about this world. We were already focusing. All right. So tonight's topic, subtle realms, dimensions, and simultaneous parallel universes. Before we get full into that topic, it's important, and this is kind of like a transition between what is energy healing and that topic. We need to make a few more connections. So one of the important connections, and we start out with the healing for everyone on this as well, is that we focus our attention differently in different parts of the body. So there's a great big Mahamarma in the head. It's a big sort of energy center. Think of it as bigger than a chakra. And it's completely designed to go out to the relative material level of creation. So the whole relative material level creation, we're processing through this area. All of our senses of perception, all but like sense of touch is everywhere, right? But hearing, sight, smell, taste, it's all up in the head. So the sense of perception are designed to extract information from the relative field. And then those are connected to cortices in the brain, which are designed to process that information. And finally, it all kind of comes together. It varies the homunculus and the prefrontal cortex does analysis and synthesis on that information. So this whole area is oriented towards the relative field. That's called I think it's called the Shodhana Mahamarma. Then there's the Basti Mahamarma. That's the one in the gut. And the Basti Mahamarma is designed to go the other direction. And if we think about, okay, couple things, all the neural connections that are in the gut, like almost as many as there are in the brain. So it's almost like a second brain, right? There's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of processing that goes on there, but no verbal center. So we don't talk from our gut. That's up here. But think about what happens in the gut. We process food, right? The food comes in here because it's coming from the environment, and we break it to smaller pieces and smaller pieces and smaller pieces and smaller pieces. And eventually, when we get to the gut, we break it down to pieces so small that it basically can be turned back into our body. So there's a kind of a transition that takes place there where this relative material level of creation becomes intimate. It becomes so refined, broken into such small pieces that it becomes ourself. So the orientation of the gut is more of an inward orientation. We can see it by how we process food, but it's also the inward orientation based on the nature of the energy in that area. This is important because we're looking inwardly in tonight's webinar. We're looking at subtle realms and dimensions and so forth. So it's important to get that part of the physiology online. The heart, the beautiful heart, the Hriddaya Mahamarma, is the balancer between these two areas. And it's also kind of like a liaison, because the heart speaks the language of feeling. And the language of feeling sits in the junction between all the kind of relative experiences we have and the inner experience of being. So the language of feeling kind of knits those two together, because all this relative field can be interpreted in the context of its energy frequency or its feeling level. Different things, like this picture, it's like really soft, right? It's really sweet. It's a relative thing, but there's a feeling to it too. It's very refined and very delicate. You'll have to come look later. All they can see is green. Anyway, which is also beautiful in its own way, right? It's got its own feel to it. So looking in at the 3 Mahamarmas of everybody in the session, looking into the Mahamarmas, everybody. It's so nice to it's such a privilege and honor to connect with everybody. Thank you. And all I'm doing is just shining the light of my awareness to help you shine the light of your awareness on those areas. And we'll just watch the coordination that takes place as we shine the light. What happens is the inner communication, the balance is created. Our tendency as Westerners particularly is to sort of orient all our awareness out through this Mahamarma. There's a lot more sort of emphasis on it. So we're kind of, there's a balancing taking place. And I'm just reporting what I'm seeing at this point. So there's a balancing taking place, and this energy of reverence or honoring is going to the heart and the gut Mahamarmas. I'm just looking and feeling and supporting the release of a lot of feelings of fear and uncertainty that tend to sit in the heart and gut area because we don't have a lot of words for it, because it tends to be a taboo area, the whole gut, like we don't talk about bowel movements and things like that. So generally, in public, like now, we don't do that. So, right? So there's a certain natural, going back many generations, of like habits of thinking and responding to the information that we receive from these heart and basti, the hridaya and basti mahamarmas, to be kind of like secondary or put aside or not paying attention to it. Also diversions and digressions, even procrastination. So all those energies are being lit up when we put our attention on those areas. And as they light up, whatever aspects of them are unbalanced or not useful for tonight's healing and for all of our physiologies in the long term, for long-term health, it just dissolves away. It dissolves, it dissolves, it dissolves. So that's what's happening. And that's nice because that lightens up the physiology a lot. There's a lot of excess stuff. We don't need all the excess, right? And that's happening for ancestors too. Going back for most people, 5 generations. So sweet. Whenever we do this work for the ancestors are so grateful. And that feeling of reverence that we entered into this healing with, it gets magnified with the gratitude and the sweetness and the love. Particularly those which are not in the body at this time, they're seeing it from a really broad perspective and understanding the significance and the importance of restructuring your DNA so that your body is just healthier. And there's a nice coordination and a nice understanding between the mind, conscious thinking, and the body. And that's basic for healing, right? The principle of this energy healing process that we're doing this webinar is to empower you to do your own energy healing. That's the idea, is that we all become self-sufficient. Because Dorothy can't meet with everybody. And, and besides, I would rather be a coach to you and support your ability to become incredible and masterful and fantastic and exceed my abilities than I would to be somehow the big authority. So I love you. All right, so that's the healing for the Mahamarmas. All right, so let's now go into subtle realms and all those different areas. So we have a kind of landscape that we're dealing with when we think what we're looking at here is the physical body that everybody can access. It's our point of entry. It's our point of entry to the whole healing process, is grounding or integration in the physiology. Then from that, we experience that we're more than just the physiology. So there are all the subtle levels of self. There's the mental, emotional levels of the self. There's the etheric body. For those who've seen my videos on layers of the physiology, there's a whole field of consciousness. And the field of consciousness has infinite potential. The field of consciousness is also, at its source, infinite and eternal. So it's this big thing, it's this big place that we're dealing with. And somehow we need to make sense of the whole thing in order to navigate intelligently, in order to find those seeds of discord or the seeds of illness, and in a very efficient way get in and pluck that thing and do whatever is required as far as transformations with it. Lots of previous webinars, we talked about the transforming process and the healing process, and we're going to keep doing healings and transformations here in today's session. All right. So the landscape. I'm going to lay out the landscape. So we actually have 3 axes. There's one axis that goes from the relative material physical level of self to finer, more delicate, more refined, less concrete, all the way down to the source of creation. That's the y-axis. There's the x-axis that ranges from horrible to wonderful. So this is one of the amazing blessings of being human, is that we sit at a certain point in creation where we have access to this range of manifestation. So dark to light, and the principle is when we stay balanced, we stay connected to source. And when we're connected to source, then all the features and qualities of the darkness and the light are able to work together to support a manifested world, because it is the diametrically opposed energies that come into play with each other in like a dynamic way that give rise to the energy that allows the relative manifest level to come forth. So as humans, we are in this kind of position of like a privileged position, sort of being able to see all of it, and also to be able to step back from all of it and work with it. Thank you. There's a z-axis. There's a z-axis, and the z-axis ranges from smaller than the smallest to larger than the largest. And this brings in one of the first principles that I wanted to talk about tonight, which is dimensions. Dimensions, when we think about them in terms of mathematics or physics, is like the first dimension is a line, and the second dimension is a plane, and the third dimension is like a cube, like that, and then fourth dimensions are playing with various types and varieties. And you know, some physicists say there's like 11 dimensions. Those aren't the dimensions I'm talking about. I'm talking about something simpler, a lot simpler, something that we can easily wrap ourselves around, and that is from really small to really big. So we can think of dimensions in the body as going from the whole body down to body systems, down to organs in the systems, down to tissues and cells and subcellular structures and molecules and atoms and subatomic particles, and then down to the quantum level. So that's one direction of the z-axis. And the other direction is bigger, right? And out to the whole universe and the whole multiverse. The reason that's important, and the reason it makes sense that that's one of the axes that we're working with, is because at every point along the y or the x-axis, we can find smaller than the smallest to bigger than the biggest. We can find it. We can find it. As I was exploring this topic, I found another axis. There's another one. And that has to do with levels of, and this is specific for humans, specific for human nervous systems, and that is levels of awareness. Because there's another axis that runs along being like completely asleep, like even like deep sleep, like no awareness, up to like hyper awareness, up to full awareness, full cognizance of the entire field. And that can also be found at every single point in this field. So look out. So it's a little bit complicated, but it's not impossible, because each one of us knows exactly what our level of awareness is right now. So that's easy. We can find ourselves. We're in waking state of consciousness, and some of us are experiencing waking state with broader comprehension, awareness of the source at all times, many layers, and infinite, and all of them go to infinite in every direction. All of those axes go to infinite. All right. So dimensions. Dimensions are from smaller than small to bigger than big. How do those relate to energy healing? Now we come to the value of being in a webinar. One of the beauties of being in a big group like this is that we get a chance to do energy healing on a broad scale. And it's very exciting. It's really, it goes beyond the sort of dynamics that we get in like one-to-one consultations. So what we're looking at, if we're looking at our z-axis of dimensions from small to big, is we're looking at a bigger wholeness. We're looking at our healing circle as a bigger wholeness. You are that. You are that. And what I'm seeing, and a healing coming in for that. So what I'm seeing happening is, this is a opening of communication flow, resource, access to resource. Resource in terms of knowledge, resource in terms of life force, resource in terms of like power. I'm also seeing resource in terms of values of empathy and compassion. I wasn't expecting to see that. Values of empathy and compassion, extended values. And it seems that the coming in of this empathy and compassion is stirring feelings, like really intense feelings in the body, in the collective body. It looks like there's some fear that's being released. It also looks like it's okay. It's releasing in the Hridiya Marma for everyone in our healing session. And our Hridiya Marmas are kind of like working together as a collective to support the awakening of a greater level of compassion and empathy. And it's soothing, it's soothing, it's soothing down, it's soothing through the whole upper body area, and the entire digestive system is also being affected by this. It has to do with releasing fear from the process of metabolizing experience. So for the digestion. Right there. Beautiful. You're so beautiful. You're so sweet. You're so sweet. Thank you. And it's clearing, and it's clearing, and it's clearing, and it's clearing. There have been blockages here in the throat area and in the ability to speak truth. So we're clearing these blockages now. And that a lot of fear had it was setting in the throat area. That's because it's not safe to speak. To quote one of my favorite speakers on YouTube, whose name I will not mention because I'm supposed to stay apolitical and he's very political. So if you're curious, you can email me. Anyway, but it's not, because whenever we speak, there's always a chance that somebody's going to take that and they're going to work with it and play with it and think about it and find some area that needs to be refined or needs to be transformed. And so it means ever going back to the drawing board to look again and to restructure a better way to bring the speech forth so that it has an even more life-supporting effect on the environment. And that's the idea. And it's nothing to be afraid of. It's something to be proud of. It's something to embrace. So we're moving to embrace that. And it's just a shift in habits. And for some people, it's shifting in habits through the female lines, the female ancestral lines, going back many generations. Thank you. I'm glad Europe is with me too. For you guys too. This is important. This is important because a lot of times we put the responsibility for not speaking on the next person. I can't say it because I don't want to hurt that person's feelings. Or so-and-so will get upset if I approach that sensitive subject or something like that. The reality is so-and-so will never evolve if they continue not looking at what they're doing and making the same mistake over and over again. But everything can be done with love. That's why we did this opening, to increase the flow of compassion and empathy. It's perfect. And you have to understand, everybody, we're doing healings that are going out now to the entire collective of our world. there are lots of people that feel that they are in a position that they cannot speak. So that's clearing for lots and lots of people, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, tens of millions, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. About 70 million people are receiving the healing from the heart of compassion of our group. Our group is able to hold that compassion and empathy in a place of holy silence, of infinite silence, so that always there's more empathy and always there's more compassion than there is the pain or the symptom that was behind that's being addressed, so that the speech comes out. Oh boy, you've got some great stuff coming in the chat here, you guys, too, and I need to get to all that stuff too. Thank you. So always, everybody's taken care of before they have to deal with the problem. If the antidote can come before the problem, you're golden. So this is the gift that started out as a little seed. Those of you who are with me when that started, you know who you are. It started out as a little seed to produce the antidote before the healing transformation occurs. If the antidote's already present, then when we go in to look at all the darkness or the imbalances or the incompletions or the problems, the force of goodness is already present to address it, and it's smooth. It moves with grace. So what's happening is this, what did I say, 70 million. It's folding back in. The gratitude is folding back into our group. So this was why we had to open channels of communication first, so that we can receive and experience that flow of grace coming back into the group. It's coming in the form of reverence and gratitude and love and lots of appreciation, lots of awareness. As that's coming in, it flows into our physiologies and it has a transforming effect for our physiologies. And at the same time, we can just give it back to our own deepest inner silence, because the inner silence is the place from where all the healing processes emerge anyway. So our group becomes a sort of a coherent, organized structure that allows a flow of reverence and love and gratitude to go to the mother of the universe, to go to the source of creation, to nurture and nourish the very place from where all of us come. And when that happens, it nurtures every particle of the physiology. It nurtures every cell from the inside out, every system. And I'm seeing people's intelligence of the systems of the body light up right now. That's what it looks like: digestive system, nervous system, limbic system, circulatory system, eliminative system. And what seems to be happening is, because of this big healing that we did and the flow of gratitude and love that moves towards the mother of creation, then blessings start showering from the source of creation into our bodies to heal whatever requires healing. Always just turn the love and gratitude back again. Because when we turn it back again, then that creates even more showers. So that it's like a flow that starts to move through you, not stuck, but just through. So the healing is coming in, the systems of the body are getting engaged, they're waking up. The relationship between the intelligence of the systems, which are unique intelligences, which are related to realms, and they're, we need to move into more about the subtle realms and stuff coming up in just a second, but so we can identify precisely where do the underlying administrative intelligences of the systems of the body reside. Where do we find them? Because there is someone to be friends with. We want to really make intimate, very loving connection with all the forms of self, which are responsible for supporting and maintaining excellent health, optimal health, robust health. All right, so I want to go there, but we've got questions coming in and stuff coming in from the chat. Oh, hellos from Utah there. Questions coming up here in the chat. While taking it easy earlier, preparing for this webinar, I got a sweet feeling in my gut as a taste of what our healing will help with. And I had a really good bowel movement and still feeling great from it. Isn't it lovely to clear out the system? It kind of makes clear out the gut, the head clears out too, doesn't it? It's lovely. It's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. People are so sweet. Yes. And isn't that interesting? Like, I'm reading it now, but it's so validating because we're doing the healings for the big healing that went down for the digestive system just a few minutes ago. So nice job. I'm so proud of you. And then here's another one. This is a mantra. Aditya Hridyam. Aditya Hridyam mantra for sun deity, recited by Agastya to Ram before fighting Ravana. Right. So I think there's a YouTube video with this mantra in it. They were like the weapons, energy weapons that Ram used to destroy that demonic energy that had sort of gripped the earth, and no one could get rid of it because it was too big. Because Hridyam from the gut. Oh, Hridyam from the gut. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we have somebody on the webinar who's kind of an expert in mantras. So thank you so much for offering that. It's beautiful. If it's all right, I might put that in the follow-up letter that comes out with the webinar afterwards so that everyone can see it and get it. And maybe also thank you. And maybe also the YouTube video. There's a YouTube video of it being chanted or something. We can look for that. Anyway, thank you. Yes, because this is important to, I don't want to diverge too much from the topic, right? But with regards to the divine dialogue, the story of Ram is the story of the flow of absolute silence collapsing to absolute dynamism, and absolute dynamism collapsing to absolute silence. And that cycle goes around, around, around. And as it does so, evolutionary transformation occurs with every loop. And ultimately, that's what we're doing in the energy healings, like this thing that just happened with this healing for 70 million people. That was one of those loops, actually. I'm glad I don't wear makeup. I can just rub my eye if it itches. No, the thing is that we go into the process not knowing, like there's a certain order. There's a way that life has been, and it's been in order, but there's something about it that for whatever reason is insufficient to give full expression to divinity. So we lose that. It's like Ram being cast out of Ayodhya. He gets cast out and he travels for 14 years before he finally, meets the demon that had gripped the world and overcomes him. But in that process, he picks up tools. He picks up mantras. He picks up energy tools. His team that he's with, they get specific gifts along the way. And one carries the weight of those tools or gifts into that point in the process where one faces the greatest fears. And those tools and gifts are the structures of order that are new. Like Ram didn't have them when he left home, but he attained them along the way. And they form the seeds that support the evolution back when Ram comes home, a king. He comes home the king of, he leaves the prince of Ayodhya, but he comes home the king of Ayodhya because there's a transformation that occurs in that process. All the great epic legendary tales and myths of all time follow this same pattern. We're home in order, and we leave home, and we receive knowledge, we receive strengths, and then we use them to face our greatest fear, and we are transformed through that process, and we come out transformed and great and come back home, and it's a whole new story. That's also the recap of energy healing. That's another recap. All right, let's talk about, we talked about dimensions from smaller than the smallest to bigger than the biggest, and it's one of the important areas to check if you have a symptom, or I'm tying everything back to energy healing, right? We have a symptom. Something's not right in the body. Something doesn't feel comfortable. So where's its source? Well, is it something that's coming from an organ or a tissue? Maybe the symptom is in an organ, but the feeling of that's this part. This is the head. Mahamarma says, oh, it's in an organ. I have an organ that's not functioning right. Okay, good. Then what does the heart have to say about that? Well, there's a feeling in it. Oh, there's fear. Remember earlier we were clearing fear from the throat area. So there's a feeling in it, and the feeling gives you a clue to where the seed is. What's actually causing that thing? And when you look at the seed, depending on the universal nature of the feeling, that will tell you whether it's something specific, something you personally are carrying, or something that's being carried at a collective level. In this case, I went into that feeling and I was like, it wasn't specific. It was fear, but it wasn't specified enough, right? It wasn't tied in with someone's specific experience so much. It had an element of bigness to it. So we're looking along the dimensional axis and found and counted. I just counted up. It was 70 million. All right, so, all right. Subtle realms are in the x-axis. So the x-axis ranges, and we can subdivide infinitely, from infinitely horrible to infinitely wonderful. Subtle realms. In dreaming, and particularly in dreaming state, we experience the subtle realms as more concrete than this one. And this actually ties in a little bit to, and we've talked about subtle realms quite a bit, I think, in previous webinars, but this also ties into something, the new information I wanted to talk about tonight, which had to do with simultaneous parallel universes. It's interesting because in our waking state, this universe, right where we are right now, this is where our reality is collapsed, and this is the one we're experiencing right now. So there are infinite simultaneous parallel universes where we're experiencing lots and lots of different things, but they're virtual. Because they're virtual, they're more malleable. They're not as like, they haven't like isolated down. They're not defined. They're not highly defined. They have like play in them, like a steering wheel that has play in it. And using the comprehension of simultaneous parallel universes supports several areas of energy healing. Number one, it's a place we can look for the seed of imbalance. A lot of times people will say, like I met with this beautiful lady this last week, and she was saying that all her life she lived like very pure. You know, she never drank or smoked, and she meditated since she was 4 years old, and, you know, just a very pure level of life. And she was always doing her dharma. And then she got hit with like this horrible illness, really, like for any of us, it would be like, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. So she's like, how can it be? How can it be that I could do everything right, and then yet my whole life falls apart? It's a bigger dharma. She's working in a bigger dharma. She's not working for herself. She took a hit in order to pull her family out of the grip of one of the darker realms. One of the darker realms. She was so innocent. She didn't realize her husband was stuck in some really dark place. And in order to pull him out of that dark space, she had to get into her own dark space to go get him, bring him out like that. It's important to know the whole range. It's important to feel confident that as humans, we are endowed with the resources to traverse the whole range from really awful to really great without being gripped by it. Sometimes people get gripped, but it's only because they don't know what's really going on. They're not aware. That's why tonight we're opening up everyone's awareness. Everyone's awareness, so we know what's going on. So we never get gripped. So what's happening now is another healing. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for our beautiful, stable, healthy energy healing circle that allows for such a healing. We're receiving a download. First of all, some of those intelligences that oversee and administrate the different systems of the body are ancient and much larger than our bodies. The actual administrating energies are way bigger than the human body itself. They are aspects of self. They're aspects of you. They're parts of you that are bigger than your body. We all have parts that are bigger than our body. If I can think of the moon, that part of me is like all the way to the moon. That's bigger than my body. So you can do it. This intelligence that is able to move effortlessly through the subtle realms of creation, this ancient intelligence that sort of holds all of the systems of the body, it is completely long ago, since ancient times, completely established in a state of balance. And so one of these forms is stabilizing itself. This isn't our systems of our body. This is the system of our healing collective. It's stabilizing itself in the center of our healing collective. Absolute, supersymmetric balance. So beautiful. That balance is utterly grounded in the source of creation. And it's communicating the value of balance to everyone in a much finer degree. Remember, we've talked about balance before when it comes to subtle realms of creation, but the range of balance that can be attained is infinite. So we're actually getting that value of balance at a much deeper, more profound level. It's just going in and in and in and in and in. And it's stable. As it stabilizes the system, one of the things that happens is I'm seeing in the mental and emotional bodies and astral bodies of everybody in our healing circle is a greater confidence in being able to work in the field of the subtle realms of creation. Because there's a lot there. It's complicated. It can be a little complicated, you know? Just settling it down, just settling the energies down a little bit. The body, as it settles down. All right. Now, one of the things that's happening, and this is kind of an individual thing, but we're clearing a lot of discordant feelings from the head, sinuses, and brain area, because as that balance sort of stabilizes into our healing circle, what happens is any imperfections, toxins, they're starting to loosen up in the system. And to a large degree, I'm seeing them stuck in there with discordant feelings as well. Particularly hopelessness is clearing. And hopelessness, in the feeling of hopelessness, there's a feeling that goes back thousands of years. it must be that in the history of humanity, there have been a lot of people who felt like they were trapped in situations that they could not escape. Again, the compassion and empathy of our circle is helping to soften that. We're like a giant, our healing circle is like a giant angel. And it's just going in and supporting all the people who felt themselves stuck in a situation in which they could not escape. And that for whatever reason, it was uncomfortable or unacceptable or not working for them there. And I'm feeling it shifting. What's happening is that central grounding is supporting the ability to find divinity in everything, in every point, even an awful situation, even a situation where you're trapped and you don't know how to get out. It's fine. Even the divine is there. And that's why we had to go in. That's why individuals from history had to go into situations like that. They wouldn't have been able to find the divine at that point, or that quality of divinity, if they hadn't been sort of forced into a situation with it. So that's happening. And it's going back thousands of years. 2,200, like that. Just through this sort of modern era that we're in. All right, and that's good. It's settling down all those toxins that were getting sort of stirred up in the system. They're being dissolved. There's a lot of lovely dissolving energy coming, light medicine. Our causal bodies, on our y-axis, like the causal body, which is about there, it produces various light energies that dissolving toxins down to deeper, going here on our z-axis, going down to finer, 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 as fine as it needs to go in the physiologies in order to promote purity and clarity in the physiology. Also strengthening, there's a sweet compassion holding around the immune system also to support that strength, the immune system. Beautiful. And the immune system is related to the astral body. So this healing that started out with the astral body, mental and emotional bodies, all that's being stabilized. Nice job, everybody. Going back 2,200 years. Good job. Amazing. Amazing. As we heal the world, we heal ourselves. Because the seeds of discourse can sit in all sorts of places. The symptom only comes up because the seed is stuck somewhere where we hadn't looked before. So we're looking in lots of different places. All right. So subtle realms in the simultaneous parallel universes. In our physical body, we don't experience them so concretely. We only experience them as various types of ethos that sort of form in specific locations, around specific events, around memories. You know, a lot of Westerners, there's a feeling for Christmas, right? There's a feeling in America for the 4th of July. There's that whoop-de-doo feeling for the 4th of July. You know, there's all different kinds of feelings associated with different holidays, or the feeling of springtime, right? Versus the feeling of deep winter. It's a very different feeling. Springtime, everything wakes up. So these ethos, this kind of ethos type of energy that sort of sits around various experiences, these are actually the manifestation of realms in our world. So we do experience them as like flavors that influence our experience. And there's order. There's an order in it. And we do a lot of deep exploration into these different realms in dream state. In dream state, the nervous system is able to function in such a way that it traverses the realms much more fluidly than the nervous system can in waking state. that one axis, and I don't know which way to put my hand for it, because we've got Y and X and Z, and then there's like another axis that has to do with awareness of consciousness. That one, dream state, is in that axis. There's like the deepest of deep sleep, and I don't know anything going on, and then there's like just abstract subtle, I know what's going on, but it's really, really abstract, and then there's dream state, and in dream state you can go through and you can pluck out a range in there. This is interesting to note as well. Humans, we have this ability to sort of embrace or encompass this really broad range, from infinitely horrible to infinitely fantastic, whereas a lot of beings without human nervous systems, they exist in like little ranges, like think of angels, for example, the idea of angels, which are really aspects of self, but they exist within just a range. Angels don't like to go visit the hellish ranges, right? Realms, they don't go there. They stay in the sweet, soft bit. And the asuras, or the demonic energies, they just stay in their constrained area. So we have this ability to experience all of it, but in a more or less virtual way, which means we're always witnessing. And witnessing gives you the autonomy to make it do what you want it to do. It gives you the autonomy to make decisions, to apply the divine dialogue, to apply your logos. And that divine dialogue is another word for logos also. And logos is that expression of self, which has a transformational effect on the environment, which causes consciousness to expand. This is speech. This is the divinity of speech. And it doesn't always have to come out of speech, right? Because we know that the artists and musicians are always kind of like a step ahead of the evolutionary trajectory of culture. You know, the artists and musicians that are revered as the great ones at any given time are the ones who have anticipated the direction that culture is moving, and were able to give expression to it. And the collective was able to look at that expression and go, oh yeah, that really resonates with me. That's where my bliss is going. That's where my consciousness is expanding. So we have the tools to make this work. So there's nothing to be afraid of. It's a range. And if you get in dream state, sometimes you can get a little bit gripped into some darker or lighter area. But as long as that axis, I'm going to have to make it a diagonal axis, the one that's the states of consciousness, maybe it goes this way or something, the states of awareness. If there's enough awareness there, you never get gripped. You never get gripped because the grounding is always there. That's what this healing is for, with this cord of grounding energy in the middle of our energy healing circle, is stabilizing for everyone. So you always have the witnessing value. You always have the connection to source. It's very important for energy healing. It's very important to be able to take good care of yourself. All right. So let's talk for a minute about simultaneous parallel universes. Now, this is the area I've worked with least. So it gives me the opportunity to use my logos to actually explore. We're exploring together. Now we're exploring together. So there's a kind of a congealing taking place in our energy healing circle. We're kind of like, I feel as if we're coming closer together, and we're like more orderly. We've kind of sloughed off all the excess material that we don't need. And there's a kind of a sacred energy, sacred healing space that's opening for the whole collective of our group. It's very quiet. It's very like alert. So increased alertness and increased discrimination. And what I'm doing is I'm just offering the concept of what is it? Like, how do simultaneous parallel universes really interface with the energy healing process, and what is useful for our group to know about it? I'm offering that kind of question into the source of creation. Pan-dimensional. Oh yeah, nice word. Pan-dimensional, multidimensional. It's interesting what's coming back. What's coming back has to do with industry. It has to do with the fact that as a culture, we've worked with the raw materials of our world in order to produce machinery and technology that allows us to move in ways that our predecessors could not. So I'm going to offer that. That's like an elaboration of my question in a sense, because it wasn't like really an answer, right? So I'm going to offer that back into the source of creation. And it's the way it's sort of falling into the source is in the form of like, is there a technology that would be required to traverse the virtual pan-dimensional level of creation, or the simultaneous parallel universes? So I'm offering that into source, and we're keeping our coherence and all the excess, like trimmed off all the excess here. Okay, so the first thing that's coming back is the main technology that we need to traverse simultaneous parallel universes or virtual universes is facility with the universal language of perception and experience, which means we're expanding the logos from verbal speech or even musical notation into a language of feeling. So we have our coherent group, and now we have a download coming into the coherent group of the details of mastering this language of feeling, the language of perception and experience. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And what's happening is I'm seeing an even greater coherence taking place, a greater kind of congealing and acceptance of energies through the whole body. What I'm realizing is that in order to master this speech, we need to be able to speak with every part of the body, every organ, like your fingertip says it differently than the end of the nose, than the ear, than the hair, split ends. They say it differently. Each part has its own way of communicating, feeling. And so it's like the body or the being becomes a sort of symphony of communication, where all the parts are working together and they're producing energy frequencies which harmonize with each other in such a way as to create an expression of intelligence which is truly useful to ourselves and to the universe. So the information's starting to pour in a lot faster now. So one of the things is that by functioning in this manner, it actually has an integrating and healing effect on the physiology. It upgrades the physiology. Any organ or part of the body which is out of coordination or union with the rest, that area is probably experiencing a symptom of some kind. That area comes back online. That the act of communicating in a really coherent manner, the feeling, an impulse of intelligence from the feeling level, it brings all parts of the body together. So that's the first thing. And I'm just offering to the group, to all of us, and to the field of being itself, whatever the impulse of intelligence that's most appropriate, that's most life-supporting, that's most healing for everyone in the group, that's the impulse that comes. So that's being offered now into the source of creation. And what's coming back, not expected, is that the mother of creation is saying that all that's really wanted by the universe from us as our healing group is greater intimacy, greater connection, greater flow of love, deeper understanding. And essentially, the reason that we exist as humans is so that the being of all, the source of creation, can understand itself in a more elaborated form, can understand the part of itself that as wholeness it cannot understand. As wholeness, it knows itself completely. It knows everything. And as humans, it gets to know what it's like not to know things. It gets to know how to learn. It gets to know how to have surprises. We've talked about that before. It's really important because that's expansion. That's the divine dialogue. He starts out as a prince and he comes home a king. That's the growth. It's the growth factor. You could say it's a growth factor. So the growth factor, is the impulse of intelligence that our physiologies are now communicating to this whole field of creation, to the source of creation. Growth of divine embodiment, growth of union with the source, with divinity, with our own essential nature, with the authentic self. The authentic self, that word had energy in it, so we're going with that. So offering authentic self into the source of creation and supporting expansion. It feels like a download that's coming from the inside out. Oh, nice. Also suggestion up here in the chat box, movement towards equity. Absolutely. It's coming from the inside out, is a sense of understanding of self, which is richer, more complete, more capable of embracing the range of potential. Basically, we can think of simultaneous parallel universes as a field of potential because they're moving all the time, but we have a sort of autonomy with regards to our relationship to these virtual fields of creation where we already exist, but we don't fully experience ourselves existing there. We fully experiencing ourselves existing here. Oh, more great suggestions here. Move towards equity, movement for immortality, from mortality to immortality. Yes, complete freedom, intimacy, love. Thank you for the suggestions. Beautiful. Those, and I'm reading for these guys because everybody else, you're getting that right on your chat. Those who are seeing the chat box pop up there. Thank you. And I would say all these different concepts have their own importance regarding their relationship to different parts of the physiology. You know that some parts of the physiology need to imbibe a greater sense of freedom, like the throat area, for example, that we did the healing on before. That idea that I can't speak my truth, that just, it blocks up everything. So that sense of freedom coming in there. And also there's a kind of a reverence that's coming into that area as well. And it's a reverence towards, it's a reverence for the way the heart is able to conjoin its understanding of the Basti, information coming from within, from the Basti Mahamarma field, translated through the field of feeling, and then integrated with the relative. And that's why we're doing this whole thing. We're doing this so that we can interact in this world, this relative world, in a way that's more successful, more effective, more powerful, more life-supporting, better expression of divinity, more balanced. Amazing, everybody. All right, so I'm loving this kind of lovely kind of congealed feeling that's in our healing circle. And the fact that it's it doesn't have like a lot of extra fluff on it. It's just like the pure thing. And I mentioned before that this download is coming from the inside out. It's very interesting. A lot of times I experience downloads coming in through the crown chakra, but here it feels like it's just oozing right from the center of being, like right from the heart or something. It's just opening through the whole being. And it's a level of self-understanding that supports the ability to move like a master through the realms and the dimensions and the virtual realities, all the simultaneous parallel universes. When we understand ourselves in terms of the simplest, most essential truth of what we are, and that ability, by the way, you know, you can do it and then you can do it again and again. You can never go like you can go infinitely deep on that, right? That when we do that, it puts one in a more stabilizes consciousness and sense of self in a more universal location. This is just what I'm reading off of this. And from the more universal location, it's possible for the individual to incorporate the laws of nature of a broader spectrum of reality in every action, every impulse of thought, every impulse of speech. We're taking into consideration a broader spectrum of reality. So what we're doing is we're basically essentially think of it like energy asanas, energy yoga, that we're stretching our ability to function multidimensionally and to do it comfortably and to know that we're doing it. This is a stretch. It's a kind of a stretch. And the stretch, as I mentioned before, seems to be coming from the inside out. It seems to be affecting that cord of light, the sacred cord that runs from the crown of the head down through the body and into the Mother Earth. That cord it's shape-shifting for all of us. It's becoming, I'll describe, I'm looking, everybody. Thank you, everybody who's here. Thank you because it gives me a chance to see, the physical bodies are right here in the room with me too, so I appreciate that. More orderly, but also a little bit broader. Like for cords of light, and I think I just breezed over this at the last webinar, they're extremely unique. Everyone's looks like so different. They're like faces. Faces just, they're so unique and different. And some people's cords of light are like really thin like that. And others can be really big. I've seen them ranging from like little to great big like that. And some of them are truncated, and they have like different textures and different colors in them. And like there's a really broad variety. But what I'm seeing happening is greater orderliness, and particularly with regards to what appears to be a system of threads or strings of consciousness that are connected to and associated with it. I'm seeing the cords of light starting to, we're looking, right? So we're shining the light of awareness and we're seeing in more detail. They have a fractaline structure in that they're like a thread or a cord running through the body, but it's made also of cords. So we've got cords making cords. We love those forms. Those are ancient forms of intelligence, much older than us. So what that tells us is that our cords of light are older than our bodies that are somewhere within the range of a century. Right? That the cords are these they're part of a body of life force in our universe, which is quite wise, quite ancient. So there's an element of friendship. There's an element of being extremely supportive and accepting and integrated with that cord. The cord is becoming integrated. And the energy that's coming, that I'm understanding from the cord right now, is that it is such intense bliss to be that shape, to be that form in the human body. It is such like a privilege and a joy and a there's an expansion of freedom and love and intimacy, those points that came in on the chat over here. And also immortal. The cords are immortal. Whether the body lives so many years, but the cords, they're going on and on and on like that. So this I didn't know. I knew this. I'll tell you what I knew about cords before we started this business. And that is that the cords ground us into they help us stay grounded into our physical form and into the human experiencing condition. And that when a person passes out of their bodies, the cord becomes unanchored. It becomes loosened from the source, from the center of Mother Earth, and it comes up, 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 up for miles, of course, thousands of miles, up, 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 and then eventually, at the time of death, it liberates up out through the crown of the head, and with it, the life force in the body also goes. I also knew that the Davic intelligence of the earth functions to support those cords and like maintain them. There's a certain level of maintenance that's done by the intelligence of earth itself. So our cords are also part of earth's structure. It's an area where we can join with Mother Earth. And if you think about it, all the living things of earth are essentially an extension of earth. I mean, even the matter out of which our bodies is made is the same matter out of which the body of Mother Earth is, carbon and, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. We have water, oxygen, and hydrogen, all the different elements in the body, potassium, magnesium, iron, chloride, all the different elements. So what's happening is a relationship that's being established for us as a collective and for us also as individuals in our bodies with this aspect of our own intelligence. And this aspect, this cord of light, which is also very much at the astral plane and kind of connects up to the astral body, which is like a big bubble around us, right? But it swirls and it comes down into the cord and then back out like that. There's a kind of a give and take with the astral body, which is also part of our energetic connection to the environment. So what's happening is an integration. This is what this healing is doing, is it's an integration of our relationship with the environment, the subtle environment, the level of the environment where we can easily access the finer dimensions of creation. Simultaneous parallel universes, subtle realms. This is the tool, this is the knowledge and the experience required to gain mastery over the ability to function in an intelligent and life-supporting way with those areas of creation. So, very exciting. We've come to our hour, so we have to stop. But obviously we're set up now to do some really detailed, in-depth, and pioneering research and exploration into these various subtler dimensions of creation. So that's exciting. So we're talking about simultaneous parallel universes. They're residing all along the y-axis. They're physical simultaneous parallel universes. They're astral simultaneous parallel universes. They're causal simultaneous parallel universes. The realms of creation also, you know, in the physical material. Some people in our physical world live in lives that are terrible, right? Like being in jail would be terrible. But other people live in really heavenly, beautiful lives. But at subtle levels, like in dream state, you know, you can go visit certain places where people are like very creative and they're making all this beautiful artwork or something, or places where people who are suffering are trying to find their way out of suffering or whatever. So at all the different levels. All right. Okay, thank you everyone for being with me. That's kind of thank you. Yeah, that's kind of the recap of today. I know it was a lot of material, but I feel as if now we're really set up. We're really like prepared to do some deep exploration in a whole new way than we've ever done before into these areas. And up till now, I have used my experience and understanding just to find the seeds of illness. That's the whole reason why I bother with realms of creation and parallel universes and dimensions. It's the only reason. Find the seed, deal with the seed, eliminate the symptom. That's it. But who knows? Maybe we're going to open up a whole nother field. Who knows? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the comments over here, everybody who came in on the chat. Bless you. See you for those of you on the subscription program. We'll see you tomorrow, maybe. Hopefully, and everybody will get recordings of tonight's session and tomorrow's session, and I'll include the mantras. So thank you, everyone. See you soon. Thanks for being with me. Bye.